after distilled principles from Subhi's talk, I have more principles for you. I thought I'll share with you some work that we did based upon extensive experimentation and trialing on how we can use ICT uh, in authentic ways to carry out teacher professional development at scale. So, about almost 10 years ago, we had the opportunity to begin to work with ICT in the context of high school students and their learning. But at that point of time, we also decided that we would try to use ICT uh, and achieve goals of teacher professional development, empowering them to become users of ICT in their own classrooms. And the learnings through that entire process, I feel, are valuable. And along with some of my colleagues, we have written it up as an approach paper on using ICT to scale teacher professional development and in developing country contexts. So you can just, yeah, you can scroll down a little bit. Yeah. This paper is available, and I hope I will interest you enough for you to want to look at the paper itself. Why use ICTs? They're around, and I think everybody is today speaking about ICT as a scalable way of sharing content on scale. And it seems to offer some alternatives to the dominant cascade mode of training, where a trainer hands over the version of training to trainees, who in turn hand it over to to the next. So it's like flowing down a cascade, and everybody speaks about the transmission loss as you flow training down cascade. And it seems that when you use ICT, a trainer can directly connect with trainees. And so there shouldn't be any transmission loss. And we all know that in Government of India today, ICT training is being recommended widely. Everybody speaks about its ability to address scale, its ability to be flexible, for teachers to access it from wherever they are. So we don't have to spend time getting people together in a room, scheduling, managing time, handling travel, and so on. But if you can scan the top part of this next page, yeah. But in fact, the use of ICT in training comes with its own set of new problems. And I feel that is something that we must confront and wrap our heads around as we think about how we can use ICT for meaningful, scalable training. The first is that the experience is very impersonal. When we are together in a room, simply my physical presence can hold your attention. But in ICT, it's very easy to just switch off. In fact, I'm sure you have seen trainings in which teachers have no problem. Even the IAS officer may be on that video speaking to the teachers. The bell rings for tea and the video is just switched off. It's completely impersonal, and the ability of this medium to hold attention is actually very, very difficult. The second is that it just doesn't offer the immersion that a physical workshop can offer. It's very difficult to immerse into watching a video. And it takes a lot of very skillful video making to make it something that can actually engross a viewer. The third is that usually the ICT is used without any interaction or engagement. And when it becomes a one-way transmission, even if this is a very, very knowledgeable guru who's speaking, people just stop listening. Fourth is that when poor content gets transmitted over the ICT, that's even worse. Because then you don't even have the advantages of a live person who you feel obliged to listen to. And finally, in India and in all developing country contexts, bandwidth costs money. It's not easy to actually access ICT content, to develop interaction. Devices cost. Most of the time, we're looking at accessing ICT through mobile phones, and that's actually a very, very limited device through which you can access. You end up being receivers. You cannot even interact when you have mobile devices. So I think when we think about using ICT in teacher professional development contexts, of course, we were very enthused about the potential it has and the affordances that it brings. But at the same time, we should be very aware of these limitations. And we should be thinking about how through design, can we address some of these limitations? We can go down. So when we began using ICT for teacher professional development, we thought about what should guide the process of design. And we felt that the process of design of good ICT-based teacher professional development is the goals and the objectives are the same as would guide any good teacher professional development. Just because we're using ICT doesn't mean that suddenly the goals of professional development have changed. I think we should be guided by the same questions that we ask of what does good teacher professional development look like and what should it try to achieve. So this should be the first guiding question when we use ICT. What should TPD try to achieve? And the second question would be then, what features should good TPD design have? So with this background, I want to propose, first of all, the answer to the question, what should good TPD try to achieve? And basically four things in our view. First, it should enhance teachers' autonomy, teachers' reflection, and teachers' adaptability. These are the cores of any professional practice, and any good TPD needs to enable this. The second is, it should improve or deepen or strengthen teachers' knowledge, attitudes, and classroom practices. And we have very deliberately chosen the words improve, deepen, or strengthen. It's not like teachers don't have anything and we have to provide it to them. So we have to start from what they have and either seek to improve it or deepen it or strengthen it. Both knowledge, attitudes, and practice. The third is that it should facilitate the formation of professional communities, and it should enable teachers to participate in that community. Now, you may think that this is a process of doing TPD. Can this be an objective of TPD? Yes, it is also an objective of TPD. Through the TPD experience, you must experience being a member of a professional community, and TPD should enable that to happen. And this group, this professional community, is not just other teachers. It includes peer teachers, school leaders, resource persons, teacher educators, external subject matters, and other community members. In other words, the professional community of the teacher is not just other teachers. It is actually both horizontal and vertical. And the community should include people in the vertically as well as horizontally. And the fourth is that it should enable teachers deepen their knowledge and skills to further their own career pathways. In other words, it's not just about fixing things in the classroom, but it's really looking at teachers as people on a progression through life, either improving and developing their own practice or seeking to occupy and perform new roles within the educational ecosystem. So any good TPD should try to achieve these four things. I won't go into the detailed description of what each of these four objectives are, but with this background, I want to move on to what are those 10 principles then that can guide the TPD design. And I'm speaking about TPD design for scalable TPD. The first is that we must focus on scaling right from the beginning. Scaling is not something that you do after you have achieved a good model. The idea of scaling has to be an input. It's not simply an output. In other words, we can't perfect a model in small scale and then expect that it will scale. But we must think scale from the beginning. And if possible, we should work at scale, at some reasonable scale from the beginning. And I think that thinking must become integral to the process of the design itself. So we have to explicitly focus on scaling from the beginning. Scaling for depth, scaling for sustainability, spread and shift in ownership, embedding within local ecosystems, and strategic systemic integration. All these are core elements of scaling, and we should be thinking about all of them from the very beginning. The second is that teacher professional development must be anchored in the professional cycle of practice and reflection. As I pointed out in the morning, that teaching is not an applied science. You don't learn something and then go and apply it in the classroom. Teaching develops out of practice and reflection. So the entire process of professional development must integrally link to practice and reflection. And so there must be opportunities to implement and share experiences of practice as a part of the design of TPD. It isn't that TPD gets completed and then you go into the classrooms to implement it, but that entire process of implementation should be a part of the professional development process itself. During this time, actually collaboratively planning lessons together, collaboratively trying out things in the classroom, all these can be very empowering experiences for teachers. It definitely makes translating ideas into practice much more achievable when you're doing it with somebody else. So, this conversation around practice can be facilitated during the course of teacher professional development, and the linkage to the classroom and established as an integral part of the learning itself. The third is that we must offer variety, flexibility with structure for pacing and access. We need to address diverse interests, we need to address diversity of local languages, and it has to be flexible. I think we are recognizing that teachers are working professionals. So keeping things extremely rigid, not allowing for variation in how people access content, being rigid about what is it that needs to be adapted or practiced in the classroom, I think all of these we have to reconsider. Flexibility is a very empowering um, idea, and the kind of flexibility that Subir was talking about, that you're given 40 ideas of what you will do in professional development, and you have the flexibility to decide which are the 20 things that you're going to pick out of it. These are actually ways of even both empowering and enabling uh, um, a process to take off. The fourth is offering authenticity and rigor. I think this is really important. When we say respect teachers' autonomy and respect teachers' agency, it doesn't mean you have to stop respecting yourself and agree to everything that teachers do. If we have strong points of view, we should feel equally confident about placing them and arguing with teachers and having disagreements. And I think it is only this conversation of mutual respect that gives us the possibility that we may change our minds about something, and teachers may change their minds about some things as well. It's not like everything which comes out of practice is so sacrosanct that we have to say, oh, the teacher said it and so it must be right. Very often teachers are wrong as well, just as we can be wrong. But we should be able to authentically disagree and hope that we are going to persuade each other to change our minds about things that we hold. So, this rigor and authenticity is extremely important. And I think when we bring it into the professional development practice, we convey mutual respect, which is like the foundation of any relationship that we build with teachers and the possibility of learning both. The fifth is addressing the how and the why. Teachers need to have access to the rationale of the designs that we offer them. It's not enough just to tell them it works, but we should equally be able to tell them why we think it does and on what basis we are offering this. So the rationale and the sharing of the why and the how are important in design. The sixth is to keep social learning and interactions as the central focus. One of the most important learnings I took away from the Connected Learning Initiative is that, in fact, professional learning is a social process. It's not a content transfer process. It's not about the transfer of expertise. It is about coming into social relations with other professionals and learning along with other professionals. So it's a deeply social process. And privileging the social is extremely important in professional learning. That's why in ICT, it's the communicative aspect which is far more important than the content transfer aspect. It's the communication which ICT enables across distances, which is its extremely empowering dimension, rather than transferring content. In other words, ICT use has to be bidirectional, allowing teachers to hear you and you to hear teachers. And that conversational possibility, whether it's synchronous or asynchronous, that's the kind of social community that ICT enables you to build. In fact, we have been extremely successful in using communities of practice as a way of furthering professional learning, which means a simple device like a Telegram group on your mobile phone through which you share ideas with teachers and teachers share ideas with you as a trainer and with each other. This community can enable professional learning to take place. It doesn't happen spontaneously. It happens by design, and it happens through effort, and it happens because you set aside time for it. But you can use a social space as a space for professional learning, and that's an important principle to keep in mind in designing for scalable ICT use. The seventh is to recognize and develop professional identity of teachers and strengthen teachers' sense of purpose, their sense of agency, and their sense of professional judgment. So, strengthening professional identity is very important. So, in addition to talking about foundational literacy and numeracy, we should equally be talking to teachers about new professional standards for teachers and whether they feel that that is going to support them, and if so, how. We should invite them to reflect on the 4-year model of teacher preparation, whether they think that is better than the model that they underwent. In other words, policy aspects of the profession should equally become points of discussion and debate with teachers. And that's when you're integrating them into a professional community rather than just treating them as teachers with some very specific operational tasks to do. The eighth is to adapt CPD to meet teachers where they are. In other words, be responsive to their needs, their contexts, drawing on local resources and local experience, and completely avoiding the deficit view of teachers. In fact, with ICTUs, it's been quite interesting to bring in the variety of local contexts into a discussion. For example, even introducing teachers to think about ICTUs in the classroom. One of the very early exercises we did was to ask teachers to tell us and to tell each other what is the ICT resource that they have in their school itself. And you offer that into the conversation and then you proceed from there. So all the time you're using CPD as a way of linking teachers to their context and bringing their context into the professional development discussion itself. The ninth is to be able to signal constantly what are those competencies that are getting developed and to enable teachers to recognize it in themselves. I think enabling teachers, giving them the vocabulary to describe what it is that they're able to do now better as compared to earlier, enabling them to use adjectives and new words to describe their own competencies is very important. And we need to be able to call them out for teachers. And finally, we need to recognize achievement and specific learning. I think aspects like certification, credentialing are extremely important. Especially from a university like TISS, we felt it enormously, teachers have felt very empowered when certification and credentialing that we can offer as a university recognizes what they have achieved through professional learning. And I think we should enable much more of this to happen. In fact, through this system of credentialing, we have been able to build into teacher professional development many opportunities for authentic feedback and even evaluation. Because when they come to us and we are knit together in a role of students and experts, we're actually able to tell somebody why a particular assignment that they turned in wasn't good enough, or what more needed to happen in this reflection, or which response was valuable and why it was valuable. So we open up an authentic space for these kinds of discussion, which otherwise are completely left out because of the politeness of a workshop, where we're not allowed to talk about how people are progressing on a learning path. So these 10 principles to guide scalable TPD, we've kind of abstracted from our experience of using these principles and trying them out in many contexts. And I'm going to leave you with these 10 principles. The paper itself offers you 4 or 5 case studies where we've actually operationalized these principles to different degrees and kind of demonstrated how they lend themselves to scalable TPD models. I'll stop with this.
Okay, thank you so much, ma'am. We do have 5 to 10 minutes for any questions. So anyone, please feel free to ask questions.
So, thank you first of all for this beautiful presentation. I would like to know that we have planned this for a teacher's capability to build their capacity. But I have seen in ground that most of the teachers are not interested to implement what they have learned. Means if they have gained skills, but they are not implementing it in school. Like even they are not turning off their LED TVs also, which are already installed in classroom by the government. So my question is, how can we cross check that teachers are implementing the skills, or means what is their feedback and how they are uh, uh, saying that implementing and using that skills in the classroom.
In use of ICT, there are two ways. One is young teachers, they may be adopting it easily than the uh, more experienced teachers. So, have you done any kind of comparative analysis of what is the difference and receptivity of the teachers? Because when we work with the experienced teacher, there's a lot of uh, resistance or defensive behavior that
Right.
comes across.
Yeah.
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 Hi, ma'am. Thank you for the presentation. You talked about variation and flexibility. My question was, what could be some methods to increase variation and flexibility with teachers while maintaining a structure so that the outcome of the entire session or the outcome is achieved, but also giving them that independence of being flexible and then also, going along a certain framework.
Right. So I'll just maybe respond to these three, and then if there's time, can take up some more. So the question of implementing, I feel what is important is that during the teacher professional development course itself, part of the requirement should be that you try it out in classroom and come back and share your experience. And I think when they do that in a supported environment, then there's a greater likelihood that they will adopt it post that. It's really important to get teachers to jump into the water and swim at least once. And if you can make that experience safe and required, because it's a requirement, and because they have a relationship with you and you're going to ask them, haven't you done it the next time? Because we can have that conversation, there is some pressure to try it out. And I'm convinced when teachers try it out and they experience valuable pedagogy, that will motivate them to continue to do it. So I feel that is a really valuable thing that ICT offers us. We don't have to limit ourselves to a 3D workshop. We can continue to interact with each other even after that. So maybe we meet in person for 2 days and teachers go and try it out, and you're holding them accountable to do that, and you tell them you have to post your classroom reflections in this group, and then they actually have to go and do it because they are finding that some of their peers are doing it and they haven't yet done it, and you're asking them, why haven't you done it? Do you need some help? You're making a call, checking with them. Then the push to do it actually takes place, and then teachers do try it out. I feel once you have crossed the threshold, then there's more likelihood of adoption. I feel we have to also respect that teacher professional development shouldn't become an implementation drive. I think it's good to keep a gap between the two as well, and not become responsible for the ever and ever implementation of the teacher. There should be other systems in place for that. But we can enhance the likelihood of teachers adopting a practice through thoughtfully designed professional development. Age of teachers and ICT adoption. In fact, we have not found any strong relationship between age of teachers and ICT adoption. It's just that younger teachers are more likely to have their own smartphone devices as compared to older teachers, and older teachers need a little bit of
Handhold.
physical opportunity to try it out and then overcome their diffidence. But once they have done that, they also take to ICT use. We have actually many older teachers who are champions of how ICT should be used.
Yeah.
So I think it just doesn't seem to be a barrier. Regarding variation and flexibility, I think the example that Subir offered was a good example of how you can introduce variation and flexibility. The other is we've often found also that it's not important that an entire pedagogical idea that you have conceived should be adopted by the teacher in toto and tried out in the classroom. Teachers should be able to pick what they choose, but you can hold them accountable to saying, why did you select that? Why not this? I think that conversation we should feel we can have with teachers. But we don't have to insist that they should go with the whole thing. But see, the whole thing about professional autonomy is that you're accountable for your professional decisions. Professional autonomy is not laissez-faire. I, as another professional, can ask another professional, why did you do this? Why not this? And I feel when we have that conversation, that's when professional accountability comes full circle. It's not laissez-faire. In fact, recently when we were deciding on the national professional standards for teachers, I and a few others were very keen that we should include professional autonomy as one of the standards. Unfortunately, it was left out. Many people felt if you put the word autonomy, it will get misused. But I think autonomy is not, free for all and laissez-faire. And professional autonomy comes with enormous professional accountability. I think that's really what we should remember.
Hello, madam. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes. I can.
Yeah. So my question is, first of all, thanks for this presentation. Like many organization uses for the teacher development training, many organization uses cascade model. We train the block resource person and then go to teacher, and teacher train, and then teacher go to class. So when we see this model, we see this lack of learning, adaptation and implementation in terms of quality in the classroom. But how does this ICT model, because wherein cascade we do in person, but wherein this ICT teacher training development model, where they have to sit remotely and participate and learn and adapt in the classroom. So how does this help in terms of implementing effectively in the classroom? The second question, what paper you have presented, is that model created and applied in any of the school or any of the?
Yes, in fact, these principles and this model has been widely applied at scale. So, we've abstracted the principles by working them at scale. We've used them with thousands of teachers, cohorts of 500 teachers, a cohort with 500 teachers, spread geographically over many districts, right? Overall, about 3,000 teachers being covered over at least 2 cycles or 3 cycles of the model being implemented. So it has been tried out at scale. We have not used this model in the scale of, say, 10,000 teachers yet. But we do have some thoughts on how the model can be perhaps run even with a group of 10,000 teachers. But you see, the whole model depends on your ability to have conversations with the teacher. It's just the advantage is that you don't have to be together in the same room to have that conversation. I can be sitting in Bombay and you can be sitting in Chhattisgarh and we can still have a conversation. And I understand what you're asking me and you're able to understand the answer that I give you. Yeah? So ICT is able to bridge these geographic distances, and that's a very enormously empowering thing. See, the key things that make this work is because they know that when you are saying something, you have done it. And you're speaking from the conviction of having tried it. The second, you are building a relationship with them. So they are not some anonymous teacher. And the minute I build a relationship with you, I can hold you to my expectations. And I definitely do that as an educator. There is a gentle persuasion that goes on to get teachers to try out new things. To ask them, okay, you've had all this experience, but just for now, why don't you listen to what I have to say? So we are able to make these demands from teachers. And why do they listen? Because we have a relationship. You can't ignore me. And you think, this person has done it. So maybe she has something that I can listen to. Yeah, she's not just repeating somebody else's words. That's one of the biggest problems in the cascade. People are repeating words. They have not actually done it. And so everybody knows that this is just a word is getting transmitted, not the experience. Right? So here there is some trust in the person who is speaking. That these are speaking from experience. They're not just repeating somebody else's words. I think we are able to bring that, overcome geographic distance and do it with larger numbers. That kind of conversation.
Thank you.
Awesome. I know there will be more questions. Ma'am is going to be around. Feel free to catch up with Subir ma'am as well as Subir sir as well as Padma ma'am whenever you have time. But thank you so much, ma'am, for that session as well as